Mr. Ross, be not uneasy. You son Charlie Brewster be all right. We got him, and no powers on earth can deliver out of our hand. This is the evidence locker. Tonight, the case that taught America to fear the stranger with candy, the first kidnapping for ransom to grip the nation, and a little boy who climbed into a buggy on a summer afternoon and was never seen again. It's July 1st, 1874. On the tree-lined streets of Germantown, an upscale neighborhood on the outskirts of Philadelphia, 4-year-old Charles Brewster, aka Charley Ross, and his 6-year-old brother Walter play in the front yard of their large family home. The Ross mansion looks like wealth and security from the outside, but inside, things are more fragile than they appear. Charlie's father, Christian, a dry goods merchant, has been devastated by the stock market crash of 1873. The family is living in a big house, with even bigger debt. Their mother is away in Atlantic City with the older daughter, recovering from illness, leaving Christian and a few servants to mind the younger children. So when a buggy rolls slowly past the front gate, it doesn't raise much concern. 2 men sit up front. One is younger, with a reddish mustache and spectacles. The other, older, also wears glasses and has a strange, flattened nose that will later stick in Walter's memory as a monkey nose. They smile at the boys. They hand out candy. It isn't the first time. For 5 straight days, these men have driven by, joked with the boys, and offered sweets through the fence. The candy is free. The attention feels harmless. The men seem friendly, and 4-year-old Charlie trusts them. On July 1st, they make an offer that's too exciting to resist. Fireworks. The 4th of July is just days away. The men say they'll take the boys into town to buy candy and firecrackers for celebrations. The brothers climb into the buggy. No force, no struggle. Just an afternoon adventure. They rattle through streets the boys don't recognize. The buggy pulls up outside a store. One of the men presses a coin into Walter's hand. 25 cents to buy fireworks. Walter jumps down. Charlie stays seated between the men. The bell over the store door jingles as Walter steps inside. He carefully chooses his firecrackers. When he walks back out, clutching his prize, the street is quiet. The buggy is gone, and with it, his little brother. That evening, a neighbor finds Walter wandering, crying, several miles away in a strange part of the city. The man takes him by the hand and brings him home. Christian Ross is already worried. The boys are late. When he hears what little Walter has to say, worry turns to terror. 2 men, the buggy, the store, 25 cents, the empty road. Christian runs to the police, but in 1874, there is no blueprint for this kind of crime. Kidnapping for ransom isn't a phrase that means much yet. It's something from penny dreadfuls or European scandals, not respectable American suburbs. Officers will tell him it's probably a drunken prank, some fools who took the boy for a joyride and will drop him off as soon as they sober up. But as the hours stretch into days, that hope fades. On July 3rd, Christian places an ad in the newspaper, offering a $300 reward and pleading for Charlie's safe return. That same day, the first letter arrives. It's addressed in a crude hand. The spelling is barely legible. Mr. Ross, be not uneasy. You son, Charlie Brewster, he all right. We has got him, and no powers on earth can deliver out of our hand. You will have to pay us before you get him from us, and pay us a big cent too. If any approach is made to his hiding place, that is the signal for his instant annihilation. This is not a prank. This is the first widely publicized ransom kidnapping in American history. Over the coming weeks, 23 ransom letters will arrive, all written in the same semi-literate, threatening style, demanding $20,000 for Charley's safe return, an enormous sum in 1874, and warning that if Christian calls the police, his son will die. The kidnappers have made one fatal miscalculation, however. They chose their target by the size of the house, assuming the Ross family was wealthy. In reality, Christian Ross is deeply in debt after the financial panic of 1873. He simply cannot pay what they're asking. And even if he could, the authorities begin to pressure him. Paying, they argue, will invite copycats. No child in America will be safe if this ransom is rewarded. Police and city leaders urged Christian not to give in. He's caught in an impossible choice. Risk his son's life by cooperating with the police, or risk creating a new kind of crime by paying criminals to kidnap children. Reluctantly, Christian agrees not to pay. But he won't sit still either. He begins to negotiate with the kidnappers in secret, answering their letters via coded personal ads in the Public Ledger newspaper, while at the same time unleashing one of the largest manhunts this country has ever seen. The story explodes. For the first time, a missing child's face appears on front pages across the U.S. The Pinkerton Detective Agency is brought in to assist. They flood the country with circulars featuring a woodcut likeness of Charley Ross, more than 500,000 of them, posted in train stations, post offices, and police departments. Leads pour in from every corner of the map. Psychics claim they've seen him in visions. Strangers swear they spot him at fairs, on docks, in railway carriages. Each report is followed up, and each one goes nowhere. A sentimental song, Bring Back Our Darling, is rushed into print. The sheet music decorated with Charley's face. It sells thousands of copies. Showman P.T. Barnum wires Christian Ross, offering $10,000 toward the ransom, on one condition. If Charley is recovered alive, Barnum gets to exhibit him with his traveling show. Christian balks. He'll accept the money, but he refuses to turn his traumatized child into a circus attraction. Meanwhile, police search every ferry, stagecoach, and canal boat entering or leaving Philadelphia. They scour quarries, abandoned factories, brothels, and so-called dens of vice. They even embark on a house-to-house search of the entire city. All the while, the ransom letters keep coming, slowly escalating in threat, repeating that line, "No powers on earth can deliver him out of our hand." Several attempts are made to stage a ransom drop exactly as the letters instruct. Christian follows their convoluted directions, desperate to catch even a glimpse of his son. Each time, the kidnappers fail to show. Then, as suddenly as they began, the letters stop. Charley is still missing, and the men who took him have vanished. By late summer, a break finally comes. An informant in New York names 2 career criminals as likely suspects. William, or Bill, Mosher, a boat builder turned thief, and his accomplice, Joe Douglas. Both are known to operate in the very area where the Ross family lives. Around the same time, police investigating another high-profile case, the attempted kidnapping of a Vanderbilt child, sees a ransom note. Handwriting experts notice something chilling. The script closely matches the letters sent in the Ross case, and they link it to a fugitive convict, William Mosher. For months, authorities hunt Mosher and Douglas across state lines with no success. The men seem to have disappeared into the criminal underworld. Then on the night of December 13th, 1874, fate hands the case what appears to be a conclusion. In Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, burglars slip into the home of Judge Charles Van Brunt. The judge's brother, Holmes, lives next door. He hears the intrusion and rallies his household, armed with shotguns, to confront the thieves. Holmes and his men step into the darkened house. 2 lanterns flicker, then go out. Gunfire erupts in both directions. When the smoke clears, 2 bodies are on the floor. The burglars are identified as William Mosher and Joe Douglas, the very men suspected in the Ross kidnapping. Mosher is already dead. Douglas is badly wounded, bleeding out, but still conscious. Witnesses crowd around him, demanding to know the truth. Accounts differ on the exact words spoken in that chaotic scene, but the core of his confession has remained consistent through the decades. It's no use lying now. Mosher and I stole Charley Ross from Germantown. God knows I tell you the truth. What Douglas says next is more disputed, and far more important. Some present that night later claim he admitted Charley was already dead. Others insist he said that Mosher alone knew where the boy was being kept, and that Charley would be returned safely within a few days. Whatever the exact phrasing, Douglas dies without giving a location, a description of Charley's condition, or any practical clue that could lead searchers to the child. For the public, the confession is enough. The men in the buggy have been identified. The villains are dead. But for Christian Ross, nothing is solved. His son is still gone. With Mosher and Douglas dead, attention turns to their circle. One name stands out: William H. Westervelt, a disgraced former Philadelphia policeman and Mosher's brother-in-law. Investigators believe Westervelt may have helped plan the kidnapping or hide the child. While awaiting trial in 1875, he reportedly tells Christian Ross that Charley was still alive when Mosher was killed at the Van Brunt house. If that's true, someone else must have been holding him. But there is almost no hard evidence tying Westervelt directly to the abduction itself. When Walter is shown his face, the now 7-year-old insists that this man was not one of the 2 in the buggy. Still, prosecutors push forward. Westervelt is charged with kidnapping and conspiracy. At trial, jurors acquit him of kidnapping, but convict him of the lesser conspiracy charge. He serves 6 years in prison, maintains his innocence, and goes to his grave insisting he never knew what happened to Charley Ross. With the 3 main suspects dead or behind bars, the official case stalls. But for the Ross family, the search is just beginning. Christian Ross refuses to give up. In 1876, he publishes a book, The Father's Story of Charley Ross, the Kidnapped Child, laying out his version of events and using the proceeds to fund further investigation. Across the following decades, the Ross family spends over $60,000, a fortune at the time, chasing leads, traveling out of state, consulting detectives and psychics, and interviewing potential Charlies. They follow up on hundreds of alleged sightings. They personally examine more than 500 boys and men who claim to be the missing child. Every single one is exposed as an imposter, a confused soul, or an opportunist. Christian dies in 1897, exhausted and no closer to the truth than on the day his son disappeared. His wife passes away in 1912, and Walter, the last witness to see Charley alive, dies in 1943. None of them ever learn what really happened, which brings us to the theories. When you strip away the sensational headlines, the songs, the legends, and imposters, there are only a few plausible outcomes for a 4-year-old boy snatched off the street in 1874. Let's examine the leading theories and what evidence, if any, supports them. The first and darkest possibility is that Charley Ross was killed early on in the ordeal, maybe even before the ransom letters stopped. We have two main pieces of evidence. The ransom notes themselves repeatedly threaten that any attempt to find Charley will be the, quote, signal for his instant annihilation. And then there is that confused deathbed statement from Joe Douglas. Some witnesses recall them saying that Charley had already been killed. Others insisted he claimed Mosher knew the boy's hiding place and that Charley would be returned alive. Adding fuel to this theory is a dramatic story told the following year by New York State Senator George Plunkett. Plunkett claimed to have learned that Mosher and Douglas hired a wagon in New York, drove it to Philadelphia so that they couldn't be traced, abducted Charley, then took him by train back to New York. From there, according to Plunkett, the kidnappers put the child on one of Mosher's riverboats and, to avoid being seen, tied an iron weight to him and threw him overboard into the bay. No one has ever been able to verify where Plunkett got this information. He offered no names, no documents, and no corroborating witnesses. From a modern perspective, his story reads like a politician capitalizing on a hot case with lurid, unprovable details. But it fits one uncomfortable fact. Despite massive publicity, exhaustive searches, and more than a century of hindsight, no credible witness ever reported seeing Charley alive after July 1st, 1874. In the late 19th century, a child's body dumped in a river or the sea could easily vanish without leaving a trace. If Mosher and Douglas panicked, frightened by the national attention, the rewards, or the enormous police effort, killing the child and destroying the evidence would have been one way to cut their losses. Brutal, simple, and final. The weakness of this theory is that Douglas's own words, as remembered by some witnesses and by Christian Ross, suggested that Charley was alive after Mosher's death, and that leads to theory 2. While the official investigation stalled, folk stories sprang up, especially around one eerie location, Cockanoe Island, a 27-acre scrap of land in Long Island Sound, off the coast of Connecticut. Locals said the island was haunted by the ghost of little Charley Ross. They claimed his bones lay buried beneath an abandoned house. Here's the story. Around the time of the kidnapping, two hard-looking citizens began living in a small house on Cockanoe Island. They kept to themselves, chased away visitors, and were almost always seen in the company of a small boy. The men seemed determined to keep the child out of sight. Suspicious, 3 men from the mainland rode over to the island to investigate. When they approached the house, one of the residents blocked the doorway, pulled a knife, and threatened to stab the first man who tried to enter. The would-be rescuers retreated. Soon after, the 2 suspicious men were seen leaving the island, without the boy. When locals went to search the house, it was deserted. Furniture smashed, belongings gone. No trace of the child. Rumor filled the vacuum. People whispered that the boy had been murdered and buried somewhere on the property. Curious searchers dug up the cellar but found nothing. Years later, an elderly stranger rode out to Cockanoe. He walked straight to the old house, measured a section of the cellar wall, and left, refusing to answer anyone's questions. When residents dug at the spot he marked, they unearthed a human skull and some bones. Some said that they were the remains of a dog the men had kept. Others swore the age and size matched a child, and that the boy on the island had looked just like Charley Ross. There is no forensic evidence, no preserved skeleton. The story survives as a blend of newspaper reports and local legend. Could Mosher and Douglas have hidden Charley on Kakano Island and left him there with accomplices while they negotiated the ransom? It's possible. Mosher was a boat builder. He knew the waterways. If the child on the island was Charley, his disappearance after the two men left suggests a grim end. But like the Plunkett drowning tale, the Kakano Island theory never produced hard proof. It lives in that frustrating space between rumor and plausibility, close enough to be unsettling, too flimsy to be conclusive. A less horrific, though still troubling, theory is that Charley wasn't killed at all, but absorbed into another family and raised under a different name. Most people at the time believed he had died, but some contemporaries and later historians have speculated that the men negotiating the ransom weren't keeping the child themselves. Instead, they may have placed him with someone else, a couple desperate for a child, or distant associates who believed that they were caring for him temporarily. When Mosher and Douglas were killed in Brooklyn, any link between the ransom gang and their caretakers could have been severed. Christian Ross, in his desperation, publicly offered $5,000 for Charley's return. No questions asked. If you were the person holding the boy, suddenly aware that the men who had given him to you were dead, that the whole country believed you were part of a notorious kidnapping, would you come forward? Or would you vanish, move west, change your story, and raise the child as your own? Children under 5 often have hazy memories. A 4-year-old taken from his family, moved to another state, renamed, and told a new narrative about his past might grow up with only vague, disjointed recollections of another life. Supporters of this theory point to the sheer number of men who later claimed, sincerely, to be Charley Ross. Some remembered caves, some remembered ships, some remembered being told in childhood that they'd been kidnapped. Most of these stories collapsed under scrutiny, but the pattern suggests at least one thing. Many children in that era were moved, hidden, informally adopted, or lied to about their origins. Could Charley have been one of them? It's possible, but we would expect at least one of the families involved to leave a trace, a deathbed confession, a letter, a record. None has ever surfaced. Instead, what we have are imposters. Over the decades, the Ross family investigated more than 1,000 claims from men insisting they were the lost child. They became adept at cross-examining these would-be Charlies. They asked about specific household details from Germantown, about private family matters that had never appeared in print. Each claimant failed. But one man got further than most. In 1939, a 69-year-old Arizona carpenter named Gustav Blair petitioned a court in Maricopa County to recognize him legally as Charles Brewster Ross. The Ross family, including Walter, dismissed him as a crank. Walter flatly called his claim absurd, but the local jury was convinced. After only 8 minutes of deliberation, they ruled that Blair was Charley Ross. He officially changed his name and traveled to Pennsylvania, hoping to be accepted by the Ross family. They refused. For decades, newspaper clippings and popular histories repeated the line that the mystery of Charley Ross had been, quote-unquote, solved in an Arizona courtroom. Then, in 2011, Science had its say. Descendants of the family Blair claimed had adopted him agreed to do Y-DNA testing. They compared samples from male descendants of two supposed brothers, Harrison Miller and Nelson Miller, Nelson being the man that Blair insisted had raised him. The results showed a 99.99903% probability that the two lines shared the same paternal ancestor. In simple terms, Gustav Blair was not Charley Ross. He was Nelson Miller's biological son. The most famous imposter was definitely an imposter. This doesn't rule out the broader raised in secret theory, but it does underline a harsh truth. Every verifiable claimant so far has turned out to be someone else's lost child, not Christian Ross's. Charley Ross's fate remains unknown. No body has ever been conclusively identified. No document has ever surfaced to close the case. Nearly a century and a half later, it is one of the most haunting unsolved crimes of the Gilded Age. But while the mystery persists, the impact is clear. The kidnapping of Charley Ross was the first ransom abduction to dominate American headlines. It turned private parental anxiety into a public obsession. The phrase, "don't take candy from strangers," still drilled into children today, is widely believed to have originated with this case, a direct response to the way Charley and Walter were lured into that buggy. Lawmakers took notice too. Pennsylvania became the first state to elevate kidnapping from a misdemeanor to a felony, recognizing it as the serious, society-shaking crime it truly is. In the decades that followed, the Ross family's tireless, expensive search set a precedent for how missing child cases would be handled, from poster campaigns to widespread media coverage. And in our own time, his name lives on in the Charley Project, a major online database of missing persons which honors the boy whose photograph once covered a nation. On a warm summer day in 1874, two little boys accepted candy from friendly men in a buggy. One came home, one did not. Was Charley killed within days, his body lost to the water? Did he die anonymously on a lonely island off the Connecticut coast? Was he raised under a different name, never knowing who he really was? We may never have those answers. But every time a parent tightens their grip on a child's hand when a car slows down, every time we teach that old warning about strangers and sweets, echoes of the Ross family's nightmare still ripple through our culture. In the end, Charley Ross's story is not just about a single crime. It's about the moment America realized that childhood innocence could be stolen, and that sometimes, despite all the evidence, all the searching, and all the hoping, the most important truth will stay locked away forever.